Okay, so now we want to go take a look at SE16N, and that N is the only difference in the transaction. So this is the newer version of the data browser, okay, and it's a little more flexible. So here I can enter my table again in the data browser. I can click on my maximum number of hits or even take out that if I just want to see everything, okay. Similar to what we saw in the original data browser, we have selection criteria, but here you can see that they're all available. I don't need to go click on the settings and grab which fields I want for the selection criteria. I can literally page up and down and see all my selection criteria and just enter a single value, okay, like our OR document type or even a range, OR to ZOR, okay, right there on the screen. The other thing too is fields for output is now over here. Okay, so I can just check and remove what I do or don't want to see. So it's real handy that way. I can see everything basically on one screen. Same thing, I can run or I can run it in the background to see output. Okay, from the menu up here, some of the same is going to be the same, online or background. We'll come back in and talk more about the selection options here. Variants, again, similar, you'd want to set up variants for common selections analyses that you do. So say I have all these specific requirements that I want to see on a sales document selection. It takes me a while to build that selection screen, and I want to run that daily or weekly or whatever. So I might save that as a variant so I don't have to rebuild all those selections each time. Okay, next, the extras, you can see technical view on and off, that'll let you swap back and forth between, the field names that you see, okay, and all the technical details behind it if you want to see those, similar to what we saw in SE11. I'm going to go ahead and switch that off, okay, and then the settings that we have there again. So it's kind of an overview on SE16. You're going to get real comfortable with this, so don't worry right now if you don't recognize everything or if it's not making sense. We'll get lots of practice with it here starting off in the next session. Okay, next we want to take a good close look at the select options that we're going to use for our data analysis. Okay, so we'll concentrate on the table fields and then the values, the from and to, for each of these, and this is going to be how we're going to enter restrictions so we don't pull up everything. Let me show you here one thing. So number of entries, this is how you can check the number of entries for your selections. So right now everything is blank, meaning if we were to execute this selection, we'd pull up everything for this entire table, which if we check the number of entries in our case is only 9,470 entries, but most likely in your system, a live production system or other, you're going to have thousands, hundreds of thousands, and most likely millions and millions of records. So you don't want to pull everything in all at once. It's just going to be too much data. So we use these select options here to limit that amount of data. Okay, and one of these that I use frequently would be the sales document type. And you can click on the drop down as I just did, and then you can limit or select a order type that you may want to use. And of course one of the most common ones is just the OR order type. So let's go ahead and pull in the OR right now for an example, and you can see there we've defaulted in the OR into the sales document type using the drop down. And you don't necessarily need to use the drop down. You can just type it in by itself there. Now if I recheck my number of entries, you can see we're down to 8,629 entries. Now maybe I want to see a little bit more than the OR. I want to see a range, so that's quite common too. I could just enter a range of document types. Only the OR or anything between it and the ZOR would be displayed. And you can see it goes up a little bit there, 9,031 entries. Okay, so that's the from and to, gives you the range. Okay, That's a pretty common way to restrict these entries. So the next thing here too I want to look at is the options. You'll see the options over here on the left. Let me just expand this column a little bit so you can see the full name option there. It's kind of got a colorful little button there. But what this then, you can use this for is all kinds of different ways. So maybe you want to include a specific range, you know, in your selection, or let's say I want to exclude, you know, that range. You could use exclude range. There's also this do not include that range. You can see any of the red down here is basically going to be the opposite of what we saw. Instead of include, it's exclude. So we don't want to, you know, use that range. You know, if I'm looking at exception orders, you know, often what I'll do is just say, you know, don't show me the ORs. You know, I want to look at other things that we use in this system. So that's the do not include this type. So this would pull up a list of, instead of ORs, anything but ORs. So you can kind of play around with this selection options. They're pretty useful here again. Let me just walk through a couple of them with you. We got the include range. You can see the asterisk there for include a pattern or exclude the pattern. Equal to for an individual selection, excluding a range, or anything not equal to, you know, for like a number. The greater than, less than work great with dates and amounts. So if you're looking for anything greater than a certain date range, let's say that we started having problems as of a specific date, I could say, well, show me everything, you know, greater than this date, and then I could focus in on those orders. Or if we found out that we had a problem for a specific date range, but it's not a problem now, I could focus in on that specific date range, you know, greater than the from date, right? And then I could go back and look again to less than, you know, the end date. Okay, and likewise, then you'll see the do not select ones down here. So if the majority, and how I kind of use both of these back and forth is, if the majority fall into a specific selection, and I just want to look at the exceptions, then you come down here and use these do not select. So that way I get rid of the majority of the data. You know, if I've got 10 million records total and only 5,000 of them I really want to review, then I can come down here and use these, and I get rid of the majority of the records and focus in on that narrow selection that you have. Okay, so those are the options here. These are kind of helpful up here on your function buttons here. I can delete this row, and there you see I just got rid of that option. Okay, now let's say I had multiple in here that I had filled in. Okay, and I wanted to get rid of them all. Instead of just deleting that one row, I could just say delete all entries, and I go back to a clean slate, start from scratch there. Okay, so the next thing I want to focus in on here too is the more button. This ties into our selections as well. And if I go over to the more, we're going to see very similar the from and to. Okay, and we have access to our same options here on the selections. Okay, and you can do the same thing. I can just enter a list of document types, and I can do this with any of my selections there, enter a list of them, or a range. Okay, and then once I'm ready, I can kind of check them and then transfer the data, and it pulls it into the selection screen. How I know that they're there, now if you notice the more button, it's got a little green in the box there instead of being gray, indicating that there's more entries there. I can still get rid of the entries if I want. I can get rid of this one line, or I can go back there and I can edit those entries as needed. Okay, let's say I forgot an entry. So there's a couple things I can do. I can click on new entries now. Okay, and I'm going to add in my quotes. I want to check those too. and accept those. Good. I can go back and check it. Now I can click on the new entries again, or I just page down here. Okay. Look and see. Good. I'm going to go ahead and do some new entries, and we're going to add in inquiries to look at. Same thing here. I can get rid of an entry, or I can get rid of the all entries there. Okay. Multiple selection. What this does then is it's going to pull up a list for you, and then you can just check which ones you want to include off of that list, and it pulls them in. Okay, now next thing I want to do is, let's say I'm going to blow away all these entries, and you may have some selections that you're running into where there's a large number. Maybe I'm wanting to look at a whole bunch of individual dates. I've got 100 different dates I want to look at, or a couple hundred different customers, or etc. It's more than just a few entries. So this is where these two buttons down here can be very helpful. This is import from a file, or upload from the clipboard. So that way I could be, say I'm in a spreadsheet and I've got my results that I want to review. I can just cut and paste right from that spreadsheet, from a Word document, from any type of document, and just put them right in there. Let's say I've got this document open here. Okay, great. I just select all my entries that I want to use, just say those first few. Okay, I come in here, and then I'm just going to paste them right in there and see how much time that saves. Okay, and that indicates, oh, I got all my 7 entries that I wanted to copy in there. Okay, likewise, now if you have that same selection and you've got it in a file, and let's say you repeat that a lot, so you don't want to go back through the hassle of, say you're pulling it out of some pivot table and in a spreadsheet and getting all the right data that you need and having to redo that every time. You can just save those entries in the file, okay, and then upload them right from the file that you have saved. Of course, you got to pick your directory location and your file name. Just click on open, and it will upload it right in to your selection screen. So that's going to save you a ton of time, especially if you're dealing with hundreds of entries that you want to select on. If you've got a very focused select, that's a great option there. Okay, I'm going to accept those, and we're back here, so we're ready to run our selection. So just wanted to show you how to navigate around on the SE16N selection criteria. Please play around with this. The more you use it, you'll get very comfortable with navigating this. And really what you want to do is enter some selection criteria here and over in the more, and then run your output and see the differences when you change certain things on your options or your criteria or your more, and just see what the results are, okay? And I think too, we're going to go through a bunch of exercises and examples here, so you're going to see how those work anyway. The next section, we're going to go in and take a look at the output, so we'll get to see the results of our selection criteria.